conversation, rebutting the mainstream narrative. And we've got our referendum week special. Not that we'll be talking about the referendum the whole time, thankfully, because that's almost over, thank God.
Oh.
Are you sick of talking about it yet, or hearing about it, Robin?
Look, I mean, I don't own a television anymore, but you know, it still comes through. It just comes through in the ether. So yeah, I can't wait for the whole thing to be just over.
Yes, well, one more day. I've already done my voting today, and
Ah, good for you.
yeah.
Yep.
But we have our government overreach month on at the moment, and our next roundtable will be next Thursday, hosted by Robin, just to discuss the international health regulations. And we've got James Guski, we've got Senator Rennick, we've got Karen from Exeter who I interviewed the other day, and a bunch of others. So jump onto that, and that is at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, is it, Robin?
That's right. 8 p.m. for the Mexicans, 7 p.m. for us north of the border.
Fantastic, lovely. And because of that, we won't be doing a podcast next week. It's just a little bit too much on everybody's plate.
Bit too much. Overlord, man.
But today,
with any luck, we'll have a slow news week.
Oh
hey?
yeah, let's hope. I've actually been shutting myself off from the news lately. I've deleted everything off my phone. I'm trying to go like just ninja style and just try not to look at any technology or news at all. It's hard not to. In the 10-15 minutes a day I do look at it, that's enough, and that seems to do.
Oh, more than enough. Yeah.
Oh, man, random call from someone. I'll just put that on mute. So today on the show, we are going to be talking about the AEC, who does not encourage you to vote twice. Wink, wink. We've got a Palestine protest, which is banned in New South Wales. We're talking about that. And our final story is quarantine debt collectors coming after Australians who haven't yet paid for their own imprisonment. So once again, we are joined by Robin. And yeah, how are you? How's the last week been in your life?
Well, once again, we've had a slow news week, haven't we? You know, brink of World War III and all that. But no, it's been an okay week. We've just been sweltering up here in almost central Queensland, but nothing's new.
Yeah, I can imagine. We were saying before, it's hot. It's really hot here. It's probably about 30 degrees, but it's just muggy as. So
pretty much the same. Yep.
I'll be jumping in the pool after this with the kids.
Sounds like a plan. Wish I had one of those.
Yeah, it certainly is a great plan. So it's looking very, very fresh, and it's just started to get to the point where it's not freezing. So it's actually refreshing rather than being a bit of a shock to the system.
That'll be the perfect way to kind of wash away the check hassles of the week.
Oh yeah, it certainly is. Well, we'll get stuck into the first story anyway. We are running a bit behind, so we're going to start off with this schmozzle called the AEC, and we've got Andrew Bolt, who is going to be reading the first story.
The Australian Electoral Commission has made a big mistake ahead of the referendum Saturday week. It has encouraged cheating. It's encouraged people to vote more than once. And I know which side of this debate is more likely to do that. Now, I don't say the Electoral Commission has done this deliberately. I'm not one of many conspiracy theories I see now on the internet saying, well, the AEC is rigging this thing and, what's with these pencils in the polling booth? They can just rub them out. No, I'm not saying that at all. But you just look at this tweet that it's posted. It says if someone votes at two different polling places within their electorates and places their formal vote in the ballot box at each polling place, their vote is counted. Well, both votes are counted, in fact. Well, that's good to know, isn't it? For someone who's looking to cheat, why announce it to the world? Joining me as a panel, Sky News presenter James McPherson of The Late Debate here on Sky at 10 p.m, and Evelyn Ray, writer and commentator. Evelyn, I know that traditionally we have very low rates of multiple voting, and I know it would probably take a lot of cheats to swing an election, particularly with the margins at the moment. But why announce this so publicly?
Well, look, they say that one of the most basic facts of social life is that if you reward bad behavior, you get more of it. And a tweet that only mentions the benefits of doing that said bad thing without threatening the consequences seems like a very careless thing to do. And it has since been rectified, and they have since gone into all the consequences for it. However, I think it's especially dangerous what has happened. It's a very bad message to send, particularly to those who are already wholeheartedly convinced that a noble end justifies a wicked means. I think credibility is so essential in democracy, because voting only matters when people trust the process. And all this has done is kind of fracture the trust of that particular process.
James, first.
We'll leave that one there. But this is the tweet we're talking about. So someone votes at 2 different polling places within their electorate and places their formal vote in the ballot box at each polling place. Their vote is counted. So,
I mean, the AEC isn't telling you that you should do that. They're just telling you, well, you could. Who wrote this? and the attempt to clean it up afterward by saying, well, but on the other hand, you know, the roles will be kind of like reconciled, and if it's found that someone votes, then they could be prosecuted, and here are the penalties. Well, yeah, but you didn't say that when you first put this tweet out. I don't know how anyone is supposed to read that.
But how are they going to find out if they've got no way to tell? I mean, later down in the thread, they do say, well, we've got no way to tell if you do. So how are they going to find out and prosecute people if they don't know? And furthering on that, we just went and voted for me and my wife, and they took our names, asked where we lived, put it in a computer. How wouldn't they know that we'd gone it twice? Are they using like 486s from the late 80s or the early 90s or what, that aren't connected to the internet? What is going on? And while I'm on that, why do they use bloody pencils?
Oh, we entered your details into our computer. Great. All right. That's a black box, isn't it? Not quite literally, but almost. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I just don't understand these days how you can't tell if someone's voted twice. Yeah. And not only that, we didn't get asked to show our ID either while we're there.
Yes. This is to my mind, not that I'm by any means an expert on blockchain, but this to my mind is a really good application of blockchain technology. But yeah, I don't see that being brought in, because it could actually be used to set up a really fair voting system, which was impossible to rig. So who the hell would want that?
Yeah, I mean, blockchain can be used for that, can't it? Like, it's
yeah. Again, I'm no expert, but this is what I've heard people who are expert on the blockchain say.
Yeah, you do wonder why it hasn't been explored more. And I mean, look, I can only think of, I know that old Andrew Bolt says at the start, he's not saying it's a conspiracy or anything like that, but in the end, if you're going to be doing it that way, you're going to be using pencils, which you can easily rub out, where you're allowed to bring a pen. So I can understand if it has to be pencil, but it doesn't have to be. Like, last time I checked, you can buy pens pretty cheap down at Officeworks. So, you know,
I know.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you've got this going on where you can vote however many times as you want. We did have a little clip here from 3AW. I'm not going to play it, but it'll be in the show notes, where this lady has received more than one voting slip in the mail, so she was able to vote twice. I mean, things like this, I'd put them more down to just a mistake. But you do see multiple.
But there's also no system to catch such mistakes. There's no double check that's being built into the system, because apparently what happened was she went to register on the AEC's webpage for an application for a postal vote. It didn't seem to process, so she did it again, and then she gets 2 ballots in the mail. Why is there not a system, like a fail safe for catching slips like that?
Yeah, why isn't there? In the 2023, we've got the most advanced technology we've ever had, and we're still lag behind on things like this.
I know software, software designers, I suppose, whose job it was to debug systems like this. It's their job to think of every possible thing that could go wrong, and how to catch those mistakes.
Yeah. It just seems like there's too many things that have gone wrong after this has been done so many times. And don't get me started on why it's a yes or no, whether rather than just a tick or in a box that says yes or no. I think that'd be a lot better, especially for people that aren't maybe English isn't their first language. And I know they do have different ballots for people who do speak other languages, but just simplify the stuff to the point where you can't be accused of trying to rig the vote, because whether or not that's what's going on, that's how people feel, I think, especially in the no camp. And with the trust in government the way it is at the moment, is so historically low, you think they'd be doing everything in their power to try to rectify that.
And instead, the approach is to accuse anyone who questions the integrity of the whole process of being a cooker, and of course, anyone who is talking about the case for no is a racist, even if they're actually Aboriginal themselves. So
Yes.
Go figure with that.
Yeah, luckily I have seen the talk of being racist a little bit. It calmed down the last couple of weeks. Just because you can't call 70%, will probably, I reckon it'll be around 60, 40, 65, 35. In the end, you just can't call the majority of the Australians racist.
Or as I saw on Twitter last night, someone was betting that the no vote would be 67% and the yes vote would be 68%. Someone is having a little bit of fun on Twitter. I can't call it X. I'm sorry. No, it's Twitter. What's this ridiculous X thing? Someone was having a little bit of harmless Twitter fun last night.
But it'll be 30% until 3 a.m, obviously. When it shoot up 30% to
Then there'll be a leak in the roof, and they'll have to temporarily halt the counting.
Spray paint all the cameras in the corner of the election rooms. And make sure nobody can see it, and they call it.
Oh dear! Yeah. See, we're lucky that the new ACMA legislation isn't enforced yet, or we could get dragged off to the gulag for even discussing this.
Yeah. Oh, it's not far away. It's not far away. Hence the reason for our latest month government overreach. So. Yes. All right, well, I'm glad that'll be one of the last stories we have to talk about The Voice, because I'm absolutely sick of it, and I do see it as a massive distraction from everything else going on in the world. And speaking of distractions, here's your next distraction of the week, which is the Israel-Palestine conflict, which, horrible as it is, and nobody likes to see, especially innocent lives being taken away. Me and yourself, we obviously, and probably everybody else that's watching this knows that this is not a new thing. This has been going on for a long time. But what I wanted to focus on today more is the reaction in Australia and the protests that have happened with Palestinians in multiple countries. We're going to be focusing on Australia, specifically Sydney. And I'll just play this clip here. This will explain a bit further.
Flares were thrown, anti-Semitic slurs chanted and an Israeli flag set on fire during that illegal pro-Palestinian rally last night at the Opera House. Anger is growing about why police allowed the demonstration while warning Sydney's Jewish community to stay home.
They were fired up, frenzied. What was meant to be a peaceful pro-Palestine demonstration, anything but. As an Israeli flag was set alight, flares thrown, and anti-Semitic slurs chanted in front of one of Sydney's most famous landmarks. The Opera House was last night lit up blue and white in solidarity with Israel, that public support angering these protesters. The rally started at Town Hall. The crowd quickly swelling to 1,500. Also there, Jewish man Mark Spiro carrying an Israeli flag. He was the only person arrested.
You've been arrested in relation to arrested?
For doing what?
For what?
Having a flag.
Breaching the peace.
Multiple police had me in my arms locked and trying to wrestle my flag away.
Members of the Jewish community had been warned not to attend. Mark Spiro says it was his right.
In the year 2023, Jews living in Sydney no longer feel safe.
He was removed for his safety.
Mark Leish, the son of a Holocaust survivor, also attended with his daughter, chased away after pulling out his Israeli flag.
You're just not safe, even in Australia, purely because you're Jewish.
For Jews to be told you should stay home because we can't guarantee your safety in Sydney it's abhorrent.
The police admitted they told Jewish people to stay away.
Indicated to them that people attending these positions can put themselves at significant risk.
But the Premier today said the unauthorised rally shouldn't have been allowed.
I don't think that protest should have gone ahead.
The police are not here to make political judgment calls about who should have the right to protest.
The Premier dodging demands for an apology for lighting up the Opera House.
It was my decision. I believe it was the right decision.
New South Wales Police have now launched a dedicated task force which will be reviewing social media video of the demonstration last night. They say anyone caught taking part in racial vilification or incitement of hatred or violence will be charged.
I would call on the police and the Attorney General to prosecute to the full extent of the law.
Annie Puller, 7 News.
All right, so I think first off, I got no problem with either side protesting, to be honest. You know,
Absolutely, the right to protest peacefully is a basic human right.
yeah, I thought it was hilarious how the police minister there just said, "Oh, we've got no, you know, we've got no rights in telling people who can't protest." It's like, oh, it's perfectly fine during COVID, wasn't it? So, but I think with
Indeed, right? Yeah,
we're seeing the culmination of all that COVID stuff, where you know it was not okay to protest. Now the political parties have the power to tell you that you can't protest on certain things, and people are starting to view this as being normal.
Step by step. Yep, absolutely, and of course, look, we'd better not delve into the roots of the current, conflict in the Middle East because, man, we just don't have time. But I mean, the way that I see this is there is such sympathy for Israel presently because of the brutality of the Hamas attack, and I don't have a dog in this fight, right? You know, I have Jewish friends, I have Palestinian friends. They both argue their sides of this very, very passionately. So I don't have a dog in this fight, but I would say, you know, the general public sentiment is sort of in favor of Israel. And now that can be leveraged to say, you know, to garner public support for the idea that we should shut down the Palestinians' right to protest. Now, you know, as I said, the right to protest peacefully is a basic human right. Things do get difficult when it comes to finding, you know, where's that line between protesting peacefully and chanting some slogans? When does that tip into incitement? F the Jews, is that incitement?
Well, look, incitement, no, it's not. Not at all.
I wouldn't say it was. I mean, they're not literally calling for the rape of the Jews. Okay, you know, murder the Jews, round them up and shoot them. That's incitement. You know, that's overstepped the mark. But F the Jews, no. And the whole racial vilification thing. I mean, is yeah. I don't. It's really. Yeah, I mean, well, it's actually a serious question, isn't it? Yeah. How do we define Jew? Given that they're not a racial group because there are Jews from various different ethnicities. They're not even. I mean, if you want to say it's a religious group, where does that leave secular Jews? There are people who claim a Jewish identity, but they don't. They're not religious Jews. So it's not a religious, like what is it? Well, and that's a serious question. How do we define Jew or Jewish? in terms of its category. If you can't really say it's religious because there are secular or non-religious Jews, and you can't say it's ethnic. So yeah, like it's the boundary confusion here is just massive. So racial vilification. They're saying it's racial vilification, but yeah, again, like what's the racial category of Jew? It's not a race. It's not an ethnicity.
Oh, if you really want to get stuck into it, you could argue that the Palestinians and the Jews are the same race, because they are.
They're Semites. Exactly. I mean, so that ancient term Semite referred to the area that both Palestine and Israel occupy. So yeah, the Palestinians are Semites too. I mean, this all starts getting pretty crazy pretty quickly, doesn't it? So, yeah. Incitement to violence, no, that's not permissible. Peaceful protesting, perhaps with some rowdy slogans, sure. Any society that says no, you can't do that, has actually stopped being a democratic society.
And as far as the incitement thing goes, you can't incite, you get incited. So, like, how are you going to incite people that aren't already looking for it in the first place? Obviously, ideas like that can be quite a virus and they can spread to other people, but they have to have the sentiment there to begin with. I don't agree at all with some of the chat that was going on with Palestinian groups, even the people who have been supporting Palestine, who I've been one of them. I think it's been disgusting what's been happening to that I'm going to call it a country, because it is a country. It's not technically a country anymore, but it was a country in the 40s.
It's an apartheid state, and it's been called an apartheid state by, among others, an ex-prime minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, Israeli military and intelligence people. They have called it an apartheid state.
Do you think we would have the same outcry, let's say, if the blacks in South Africa rose up and did the same thing to the whites who were overruling them with apartheid? I know there was a lot of terrorist organizations there anyway, with Nelson Mandela being the head of one of them, but
that's great. Yeah
I mean, what separates it from that? I'm not condoning that at all, because I do think it's disgusting to be cheering on the murder of innocent women and children. But
absolutely, and not just murder, but rape, which of course is the sort of the ultimate act of barbarity and warfare is rape. So the behavior of Hamas, or the particular Hamas members who led this attack on Israel, is absolutely just beyond the pale, right? That said, and this raises the issue of South Africa. How did the blacks in South Africa overthrow the apartheid system? Largely, they did it through calling for boycotts, for calling for economic sanctions against South Africa. So they called on governments around the world to not do business with the apartheid government of South Africa. Well, the Palestinians have been essentially barred from doing that because the narrative is that calling for boycotts of Israel is anti-Semitic. So like, the apartheid state of South Africa was overthrown primarily through the non-violent means of economic sanctions. That's a non-violent tool that's been taken away from the Palestinians. Violence is abhorrent, but you're like, okay, so what do? They can't do the non-violent thing. They can't do the violent thing. What's the road out of this? And again, I mean, we wanted to keep our focus for today on the implications for Australians of the New South Wales government and the police force seriously entertaining the idea and getting a lot of support for it, apparently, that it is their right to actually shut down protests. Okay. But the notion that Hamas's incursion into Gaza, so they broke through that fence in 15 separate locations. That is one of the most heavily guarded pieces of territory, if not the most heavily guarded on planet Earth. They have an incredible intelligence network. The Egyptians got wind of the upcoming attack, because of course Hamas has many ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, and so the Egyptian government warned Netanyahu's government, hey, something's up. Hamas has got something, in the pipeline. And from as I understand it, the Mossad actually kind of toned down that advice when they passed it on to Netanyahu. Said, no, we've got it under control. And then, there was no response from the Israeli Air Force to the Hamas incursions for hours. For hours afterward. This really smells like false flag. And what I see is, Israel is being, the other thing to say, of course, is that the Mossad has infiltrated Hamas, and, they have Israeli intelligence moles, you might say, extensively through Hamas. It is very difficult to believe that Israel did not know that this attack was in the offing.
It's impossible. It's
very
impossible to
difficult.
think that they thought it wasn't, or they didn't know about it.
I mean, impossible is a strong word, but man, it's awful close, isn't it? And so, okay, then you ask yourself, well, so what was the purpose of this? Because Gaza is 2 million people, right, crammed into this tiny, basically, enclave that is completely controlled by Israel. So Hamas, carries out this attack on both Israeli military and civilians. The attack on civilians in particular is absolutely guaranteed, particularly given the brutality of it. It is guaranteed to evoke the kind of response from Israel that we're seeing now, which is Gaza is being flattened. And then you've got Hezbollah saying to the Israelis, if you send in your ground force, Hezbollah will attack. And then you've got the Americans saying to Hezbollah, if you go into Israel, we're going to attack you, right? So the setup for conflagration in the Middle East has been it's like this is if this were a chessboard, right? All the pieces have been set, and you can see exactly where the moves are going. So back to us in the West, and now we're being set up to accept martial law if the Palestinians are not permitted to protest, and they start, amping up their activities, right? And then you've got Jews saying, we don't feel safe. And then what's going to be the response from government? Well, we've got to lock everything down again. That's what I see.
So it tells you something about multiculturalism, doesn't it? Like we are just flooding the country with people from different countries, different religions, and we expect everybody just to get along, and it's great for everybody, because we all get exposed to each other's ideas, which would be true if there weren't such extreme ideas. Everybody's got extreme ideas when different countries. I mean, we've got extreme ideas here, and when they all come into contact with each other, you start getting these situations where the daddy government feels like they need to look after us to make sure that nobody gets offended anymore. And isn't that the whole point of protesting? You're not afraid of offending anyone. You're just going out there to state your case to change.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I found it really extraordinary, that the New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns, is saying that the Palestinians' protest should not have been allowed to go ahead because of this terrible carnage that's been wreaked on Israeli civilians as well as military targets, and that the whole, like, the population of Sydney is supposed to be in mourning for Israel. Yeah, I agree. These are terrible atrocities. These are acts of just depravity and barbarity. And what about all of the Palestinian civilians that have been killed by Israeli incursions, into Gaza, into the West Bank? Again, I don't have a dog in this fight, because I have friends on both sides of it, both sides of the divide. And that's the thing, like, where is the mourning? Where is the Where are when are the colours of the Palestinian flag projected onto the Opera House when there's like 1,000 Palestinians killed by the Israelis? We don't see that. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
you've seen the where is it? Sorry, here it is here, lit up. And look, that's great. Like to be supporting a country who's just had one of these attacks. Fantastic. But you're right, it does scream double standards, and these are the double standards we're talking about here. So the cost of the conflict over the last, this is only up to 2020. So as you can see here,
Look at that, 2018, 31,558 injuries. The death numbers are much smaller, but yeah, total deaths on the Palestinian end of the equation, 5,590, Israeli deaths 251 up until 2020. So obviously that death toll on the Israeli side has just gone up dramatically. But with Israel basically leveling, multi-story apartment buildings in Gaza, the death toll in Gaza is just, it's going to be way above the damage that Hamas did to Israeli lives. And the loss of any human life is in these circumstances is an absolute tragedy. Kidnapping civilians, holding them as hostages. This is just, it's utterly barbaric. And I suppose, this is the failure of liberalism. This is the failure of the West, right? The whole ethos of the West is it was supposed to help us navigate a way out of these kinds of conflicts that are driven by genealogy, by lineage, by doctrine and religion. Yeah, it's been a real failure. And like you say, multiculturalism. All right. So how's that working out for countries that have taken in very large numbers of people from countries that basically hate each other?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't know where this goes, but I mean, look at what multiculturalism did in Palestine. It's
Yes.
the flood of people coming into the country, which is exactly what we're seeing happen to the rest of the country. You can call it a great replacement now without sounding like an absolute kook, because that's exactly what's happening. And eventually there becomes this tipping point where you've got more of a world population in your country than you do your own population. So you lose your identity, and then you stop becoming the country that you were originally. I've got no problem with multiculturalism to a certain point, because I think it's beautiful to take in other people's beliefs and get to know other countries, other countries' people, other religions and all that. But I guess we're starting to see the extremities of that.
Well, there's a big difference between the attitude that the US took to immigration in the period when it was really building up to become the economic engine of the world, and the approach that they took to immigration in the US is, by all means, come here, bring your children, bring your skills. We want lots of talent and enthusiasm and entrepreneurialism. But once you get here, you're American. Okay. And you raise your kids as American, and they speak, they know how to speak English, and they think of themselves as being Americans first. So yeah, which led to this whole, naming of people as, Polish Americans, Italian Americans, Mexican Americans, whatever. Probably a bit less of the Mexican, but back in the day when the predominant immigration into the US was from Europe, people thought of themselves as being, that's where my roots are, Poland, Ireland, Germany, whatever. But I am American now, and I pledge my allegiance to the Constitution and blah, 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 right? That is not actually multiculturalism. that's, you know, having respect for where people came from. And of course, you know, the Polish people still set up their Polish delis in New York, and you know, and the Italians started great pizza restaurants and all that kind of stuff. But they counted themselves as Americans. And what we were sold as multiculturalism in Australia wasn't that. It actually wasn't that. It was the idea almost that well, there is no culture in Australia. And so we're just going to be this big melting pot, and you know, we'll have Vietnamese people, and we'll have European people, and we'll have people from various African countries, and all just come together in this beautiful melding of cultures. And it sounds nice, but if there's no set of principles that all of those people have signed up for instance, that they believe in total equality of opportunity between the sexes, right? There's none of this, you know, different opportunities that you give to your daughter versus your sons, none of that. And there's no tolerance for religions that impose particular burdens. I'm thinking especially dress codes on, again, especially females. Because we have that going on in Australia. And I really do not think that is a good idea, you know, because we're basically saying, look, we have no idea who the hell we are. So whoever you are, you come over here and you be you over here, because we've got no identity anyway.
Yeah, it's never made sense to me. I did fall into the trap of a little bit when I was younger, of like, oh, Australians are, you know, I think you naturally sort of lean left when you're younger anyway, and so you sort of learn better.
Yeah, what do they say? If you're not a socialist when you're young, you've got no heart, and if you're not, you know, a capitalist when you're older, you've got no brain, something like that.
It's definitely true. It's really rung true for me over the last 10 years at least. But I think we have to ask ourselves, and especially the immigrants that come over here, they have to ask themselves, why did you come to Australia? If you wanted to be who you are in the other country, why didn't you stay there? It's because Australia is better. It's a good country. Like, I came from New Zealand. I'm an immigrant. I came here because I like Australia better than New Zealand. I just find it's a better country. It's easier to live here. There's better opportunities. And I call Australia home now. I call myself Australian, and you know, I still follow the All Blacks because they're just a great team. But
and the haka, mate, the haka, like to be.
Got some great stuff going on in New Zealand, but in the end, I came here and I'm happy to assimilate into Australian lifestyle because it's the reason I came here. And if I wanted to be a New Zealander, I would be in New Zealand. So yeah, I just think that this whole talk of Australians having no culture is just ridiculous. And it is something that really you get told when you're young, and it sticks with you until you know better.
Yeah, I mean, really, the essence of socialism, and why one of the many reasons, why I do think it is appealing to the young mind, is that it's fundamentally utopian, and there's a belief inherent in socialism that humans are perfectible, that, you know, if we just got the right system and we just believed the right things, then all of the weaknesses in human nature, all of the foibles, all of the flaws in us that have made history the absolute poo fight that it's been, could be fixed. And that is a very appealing idea when you're young. And I think what happens certainly I will speak for self, as I have matured, I've realized that human nature is what it is. Yeah. And any system that is trying to perfect it, that is trying to iron all the kinks out of human nature is really doomed to failure. We need institutions. I'm not necessarily saying that they need to be imposed on us by the state. I think it would be better if they didn't. We need institutions to make life safe and livable and productive for human beings. But the reason we need those systems is because we're not perfectible.
Yes, yeah, it is true. Like I've just been watching the show. Huxley's book,
Brave New World.
I've just been watching the show Brave New World. I've read the book and just been watching the show that came out last year, and it's just all about that, getting rid of the undesirable traits of humankind. And it's a very interesting series. I think they did it quite well. Didn't get great reviews, but I think they've sort of displayed that whole concept quite well. It just doesn't work. We are humans. It's great to think utopian, but in the end, it's just not realistic. And we have these negative emotions for a reason. It makes us human. That's what makes us human to begin with.
Exactly. And, what does utopia mean? Literally nowhere.
And
There is nowhere where you can achieve a utopia. Plenty of people have had a crack at it over long periods of time with all sorts of starting premises. There've been religious utopias and non-religious utopias, and utopias based on all manner of organizational structures, and every single one of them has either just collapsed or become a hellhole.
Yeah. Well, it's just not living reality, unrealistic. And just going back to the whole protesting thing, I think there is an element of that. While I do think there's a lot of just control aspects, I think the government does feel like it's their job to make sure nobody feels bad. A very unconspiratorial look at things, but they are human beings.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And if Jewish people are going to get offended, then we need to stop that from happening, especially with the way that I guess the way that everybody's sort of hyper sensitive about being labeled as anti-Semitic. I do have this this last little clip I thought was pretty funny. It's from 9 years ago. Elon Musk posted it the other day, and it really shows that really clearly about just the craziness of the whole anti-Semitic and anti-Palestine, and you're just afraid to be labeled either one.
In fact, we'll start tonight in the Middle East, where Israel...
What? Israel isn't supposed to defend itself?
Oh, yeah, if Mexico bombed Texas, will we exercise
What other country is held to the same standard as Israel?
People that want to
destroy our terrorists? What is the matter with you? It's the only democracy in the Middle East, you turd! Self-hating Jew?
That was weird. Anyway, what I was saying was last Thursday saw the start of a new ground offensive launched by Israel.
Tradition!
Holy look, obviously there are many strong opinions on this issue, but just merely mentioning Israel or questioning in any way the effectiveness or humanity of Israel's policies is not the same thing as being pro-Hamas.
So you're against murdered children?
Free Gaza! Free Palestine! Legal occupation! The Zionist pig!
You know what? Why don't we just talk about something lighter, like Ukraine?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah, it's so interesting that throwing in Ukraine at the end of it. 9 years old. So that was what? That was at the time of the CIA backed coup to overthrow
Poroshenko?
No, Poroshenko was the one they put in place of Yanukovych. Yeah. No, that was a great clip. Absolutely brilliant and so spot on. It's like you just cannot open your mouth in this space and say anything without one camp or the other trying to shoot you down. And I'm against violence, especially against civilians. Okay, I'm against brutality. I'm against treating people as slaves. I'm against controlling people. I'm against taking away their human rights. I'm just against all of that.
Yeah.
That's my position.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a very controversial position. It shouldn't be, should it?
Shouldn't be. Hey, yeah. I'm not going to throw my lot in with either side because the history of this conflict is unbelievably complex and understood by very, very few people, including most Israelis and quite possibly most Palestinians as well. Because they see their own side of it. But I know you're a Grand Theft World fan, and for those not familiar with Grand Theft World, if you want to find out more about the backdrop to this conflict, the last week's Grand Theft World episode is your one.
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, I'm only halfway through it. I mean, it is 6. They do long podcasts, people, but it's really
6-7 hour podcasts, so consumed in chunks because it's very, very information dense. But yeah, that'll bring you up to speed so that you won't you won't say something really stupid like I'm pro-Israel or I'm pro-Palestine. Like my position is there's some really bad players on each side. And then there's a lot of civilians caught up in between the really bad people on each side.
So it's really important, just as a closing comment about this, is that it's really important to make sure we don't judge the people of a country for what their government does. Hamas is, let's just call them a terrorist organization, and they don't represent all of Palestinians. And the Israeli government, they are a terrorist organization, and they do not represent all of Israel. Probably.
Let's not forget that the Israeli government was responsible for the establishment of Hamas. So Hamas received a lot of support from the Israeli government because they were attempting to fracture the Palestinians. It was basically a divide and rule strategy. So they were trying to take away support for the support of the Palestinians for the PLO, which was a secular organization. And so they started backing Hamas, which of course is a religious fundamentalist organization, again, closely allied with the Muslim Brotherhood. Both of those have their roots in the delightful group known by the British as the Arab Nazis from the Second World War. So Israel and various Israeli officials have actually acknowledged that. They've acknowledged that Israel was responsible for the development of Hamas. So I think we call that blowback.
Yeah, or useful idiots, possibly.
Who knows? Yeah. So bad players on both sides. The right to peaceful protest, I'm in support of it. Incitement to violence, no. Stop right there. Yeah. You can make your case without calling for people on the other side of the divide to be attacked, raped, murdered, thrown out of their homes.
Yeah. Just a sign of the times, isn't it? People against people.
Yeah, and that's really so again, if you look at this as a chessboard, what is so obvious to me is that this is yet another divide and rule strategy. And I've noticed that in sort of COVID groups that I'm in, this issue of Palestine and Israel has become a real wedge. So people who were 100% united when it came to all the COVID craziness are now bickering with each other about who you should back Israel, but what about the Palestinians? But Hamas did this terrible thing, but what about what the Israelis have done with the Palestinians, right? So this is a real divide and rule tactic among many other purposes that's been served by it. Obviously, the stocks of all the military contractors went sky high after this. Oil prices went up. So, war is a racket. Smedley Butler said it in 19, whatever the hell it was, long time ago. War is a racket. Yeah. Now, never forget this. You're being played. So yeah, don't hate the Israelis, don't hate the Palestinians. Direct your opprobrium at the bad people who are puppeteering all of this. Yeah. That's my take. Yes. All right.
Well, we'll leave that one there, but I want to jump onto some lighter news, which it actually technically is lighter after that. We've got some reports coming from people in New South Wales about people they're getting their bank accounts garnished by the New South Wales government for not paying their quarantine bills. Now, this is for me, this is just absolutely infuriating. I've been personally getting chased by the Queensland government to pay my prison fees, which they will never see a cent from me. But yeah, this is what's happening in New South Wales, and I'm wondering if it's going to happen up here too.
Revenue New South Wales has seized money from over 5,000 people to pay off hotel quarantine debts. The state's revenue body is chasing unpaid fees from over 17,000 people who owe $39.3 million in quarantine fees. The agency is legally able to garnish money from a person's bank account, wages and property if money is owed. However, some people say debt was unexpectedly taken from their bank accounts before they even received an invoice. Revenue.
So this is it here, up to 40 million. I mean, $40 million. I mean, it's probably a chargebacks for a weekend of going out for politicians, wouldn't it be? Going to fancy restaurants and catching limos and helicopters around.
I think that's how much they pay the hookers, isn't it? Certainly. Food bill.
Hookers and blow, $40 million in a weekend. I'd say that would, would cover
That's
it.
Hey.
So this says that unexpectedly taken from their bank accounts. I guess the unexpected part would be taken from the bank accounts, but I don't buy it that anybody didn't know they probably owed money after having gone into quarantine. I certainly knew after I'd done it. So the agency's issued garnishing orders for 5,190 bank accounts for outstanding hotel quarantine debts since July. Garnishing order is a debt collecting tool authorising money to be taken from a person's bank account. Revenue New South Wales can also legally garnish a person's wages, seize property and put claims on land to recover overdue quarantine fees. However, these actions have not been taken. So, I mean, there was no charge of staying in a New South Wales quarantine facility during the first months of the pandemic. A $3,000 fee was introduced in July 2020. I mean, if you were a complete normie, you could make a case like, oh, well, you knew what you're getting yourself into. You should pay the fine. Well, not the fine. You should pay for being in there. But knowing what we know, well, knowing what normies know now anyway, what we always knew, these were completely unneeded things to happen anyway. We didn't need people to go into quarantine over something that was
absolutely not. Absolutely not.
The flu.
And there was zero provision. I mean, I always go back to the document, basically Australia's pandemic preparedness plan, which was revised in August of 2019. And that was supposed to be the blueprint that was followed in the event of some kind of influenza or related respiratory virus pandemic. And there was nothing about bloody hotel quarantines. So I don't know. I mean, if I were a lawyer, I'd be smacking my chops over this. Number one, the government hasn't followed the proper process. They've just taken money from people without issuing garnishing order. So right there, I'm no expert in the law, but I would if I were one of the people who suffered this, I'd be getting a lawyer, son, getting a real good one of these guns who's just going hell for leather on all the government overreach.
Tony Nicolich,
yes,
one in New South Wales I can think of. So he'd be all over that, I'm guessing.
Yep. I mean, if they have not actually issued a garnishee order, then I would like to know how do they actually get the banks to do this for them? Like, why are the banks cooperating? Why are the banks not demanding to see a garnishee order? Garnishee is a debt collecting tool authorising money to be taken from a person's bank account. Right. So if Revenue New South Wales has actually not issued these garnishee orders, I would say the banks are breaking the law as well by allowing government to access their customers' bank accounts to remove this money.
Yeah, well, the banks, this is another reason to get out of the banks. This is another reason why we need to leave the banks behind. This is going to get worse and worse before it gets better. And
Yes.
on that as well, like I know Queensland owes New South Wales something like $40 million for quarantine fees. Why aren't they going after the Queensland government? Why aren't they doing that? They go after the poor little people first, who already have no money because of the inflation caused by COVID in the first place and all these stupid wars going on around the world, or excuses for as the stupid wars for inflation anyway. The terrible decisions made by our government, and then they're making it even worse by going after them for these ridiculous fees. We look back in 20 years, if we're still around in 20 years, who knows what's going to happen. And we're going to go, this is just so dumb. This is one of the
absolutely insane. Yeah, I mean the obvious first legal strategy is just going after government for the lack of issuing punishy orders and the banks for honouring, you know, government's demands. And then the next level is just going after the government for even implementing this policy in the first place. I mean, if I had much optimism in the integrity of the courts, yeah, that does seem a dodgy a strategy that is less likely to be successful, given that courts in Australia have largely kind of sided with the government and kind of the legal equivalent of shrugging their shoulders and saying, but it was an emergency. It's like, yeah, we actually have, you know, rules that aren't waived in emergencies. It's kind of the point of having laws and constitutions. Yeah. Anyway, so this is nuts. And man, yeah, I'd be phoning the lawyer right now if I were one of these people.
Yeah, definitely. Like, one thing that really stuck out to me when we were in quarantine, and you know, to be honest, we got a pretty decent room for our size of a family. We've got 2 kids and me and my wife, but in saying that, under the law, under human rights laws, any person who's in prison, which we were, has to be taken out once a day for exercise, at least 15 minutes, which we weren't. So I did bring this up, and it's, we can't do that because of the virus. It's like, well, that's the international human rights laws dictate that you have to do that. But I'm sure there's something they could get them on like that. There's got to be something that can be done, because if this
involuntary detention for people who had broken no law. And again, I mean, there's given that the policies that were implemented in Australia and everywhere else, obviously, but in Australia in regards to quarantine, given that there was no legislation passed, as far as I'm aware, to put these policies into place. So I don't know. I mean, I imagine there's been lawyers looking at this, but this has got to be challengeable in the courts.
Oh, it has to be. I just saw this really funny sentence here. It says the funds were taken from her account. The funds plus a $13 bank garnishing fee were taken from the account later that day. So even the bank's not stopping it, trying to make some money off people being garnished. So they're taking a fee for someone garnishing your bank account at the same time. Just a nice little
without having actually issued you the legal notice to say this is what we are doing. Yeah.
Look,
like you say, get your money out of the bank. You know, for us people who operate businesses, we've got to have some bank account. You know, but I keep very, very minimal money in the bank, and the rest is in precious metals because they're really hard to garnish.
It's a very good idea, and it's times like this I sort of relish that I don't have a lot of money in the bank in the first place. So not really much could happen to me. But it's like, this reminds me of a conversation that we had a couple of months back, and it was to do with CBDCs and a hunch we had that, you know, possibly the banks were getting pushed around by the government because they knew that we're going to be sort of switching over to a new currency, and that would mean the death of a lot of the banking system. So I think the ones that go along with the game right now are the ones that have been told, look, you look after us, then we'll look after you when the new currency system comes in.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't surprise me that the banks are just going along with this and just being, you know what, yeah, no worries, do whatever you want, because we know we're going to be screwed.
They're not naming banks in this article, but man, I can guess it's going to be NAB, ANZ, Commonwealth, you know, Westpac, the usual suspects.
Yeah, it doesn't say here.
Yeah. No.
It's crazy. I just find it funny, like how they don't even hide it anymore. I mean, they call them Revenue New South Wales, so that's exactly what it is. It's just revenue. Like they call it Revenue Queensland up here for parking fines, fines, speeding fines. It eventually goes to Revenue New South Wales through Spur, and they don't even hide it anymore. This is how we get revenue for the government. We fine you and we take your money for no reason, without you even knowing it. So. Yep. We've gone from 1984 with Newspeak to just plain old Speak now,
It's just right out in the open, isn't it? Yeah.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
It certainly is. All right, well, I think we're going to leave it there. We did have another story, but to be honest, we're already at an hour, and we want to keep these to about an hour. So we'll save that till next time. And make sure you tune in next week for Robin's roundtable. It's going to be
a good one, you bet. Yeah.
If my computer does not fail me again, we'll be streaming that on Rumble as well. So, but if you want to join in on the conversation, make sure you jump in on the Zoom. If you just want to sort of watch it in the background, you can watch it on Rumble too if you like. Beautiful.
Wherever you're watching us, we appreciate you.
Yes, we certainly do. We certainly do. Well, thanks, Robin. Anything you'd like to add before we tune off?
Yeah, look, like I said before, we're being played. So whenever you feel that urge to get angry at someone, particularly if it's getting angry at someone on the basis of some kind of, group or class distinction, even if it's like the maskers or the pro-vaxxers or whatever, just stop and ask yourself, who benefits from me being angry with this person, who I've designated as being part of some group or other. Okay. We actually need to come together as human beings and stop dancing every time they jerk our puppet strings, right? This is how the game is played. You just set one group of people against another. So we need to stop doing that.
Yeah, we certainly do. Yeah, it is really important, because I know everybody's fired up, and some of me, it's really hard not to see someone walking down the street with a mask on and just be like, idiots, take it off. But yeah, in the end, the only people you really are empowering then is the people in power, and that's it. You're letting yourself get to this really low level of humanity.
Picture them laughing at you, twirling their moustaches and smoking their cigars and laughing at all the people that they're setting against each other. The pitchfork. What is that cartoon? The pitchfork people and the torch people. Yeah. The one I'm talking about. The king. Yeah, the king up on the ramparts of the castle, and the advisor whispers in his ear, "No, sire, you don't have to fight them. You just tell the torch people that the pitchfork people want to take their torches away." Yeah, like that's the ancient game. That's the ancient strategy: divide and rule. So yeah, people, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Love your brothers and your sisters.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, and make sure you get out there and vote. Whatever you do, that's another thing. If you want to vote yes, go for it. If you want to vote no, go for it. Just make sure you do it, because
think it through first. Yes. Think carefully, and again, don't assume that the people on the other side of the divide from you are anything. Don't assume that they're stupid or they're racist or they're mindless ideologues. Don't assume anything about them. They actually have reasons. Maybe even ask them. Like not in an attacking way either. Open-ended questions. Great for starting up conversations.
Go out there, believing that you don't know everything. If you believe that you do know everything, you'll never learn anything. So
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. That's a good note to end it on. Don't ever believe that you know everything, because you know only a tiny fraction of what there is to know.
Oh yeah. All right, well, thanks, Robin, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
See you in a few weeks. All righty.
From all the horrors emerging out of Israel and Palestine, we've learned a sobering lesson that strikes a lot closer to home. Hamas's assault on Israel was characterized by a series of brutal attacks against innocent civilians. Young people and children just trying to live their lives who had nothing whatsoever to do with whatever Israel's done to Palestine. Toddlers in Israeli border towns kidnapped by militants. At least 260 partygoers dancing at a desert festival. Ambushed and slaughtered by Hamas terrorists who parachuted in. Others kidnapped, raped, left for dead. A young woman, 30-year-old German tattoo artist Shani Luke, paraded through the streets on the back of a pickup truck half naked as some kind of sick trophy, as Palestinians cheered, celebrated and spat on a corpse. But these scenes of joy and frivolity were also commonplace on the streets of major European cities. Hamas supporters in London revelling in the carnage. Same in Birmingham. Similar scenes in America turning violent. Migrants at a refugee camp in Greece waiting to be dispersed throughout Europe, celebrating the horror. And they called you intolerant for not wanting these people anywhere near your neighbourhood. Suella Braverman was scolded for saying multiculturalism had failed. Now we have entire communities on the streets of Western capitals gloating over terrorist attacks. If nothing else extinguishes the deadly myth of diversity being our strength. Will this? Sure, but have you considered importing a vast number of immigrants to bolster the GDP so that whenever an ethnic blood feud erupts, it becomes a flashpoint in every major Western city? I'm in Warsaw, and for some reason they don't experience a rise in hate crimes or violence when terrorists attack innocent Israelis. Maybe diversity isn't a strength. What? I thought multiculturalism was about Turkish kebabs and chicken chow mein. You mean to tell me it's more than that? It's a grim reality that as a result of an ethnic blood feud 3,000 miles away, we're now going to have a series of terror attacks in the West, once again underscoring that the primary consequence of cultural enrichment is violence, hatred and bloodshed. Well, almost as vulgar as the scenes we witnessed over the weekend was the barbaric rush to defend them by prominent voices on the far left, in the warped context that it was all part of some righteous liberating crusade. Listen to them very carefully and take them deadly seriously, because this is what they want to do to you and your family. Don't forget, they openly acknowledge and embrace the notion that mass migration to Western countries is a justified act of revenge against colonizers, and they view the mangled and desecrated bodies of innocent civilians as colonizers. When you watch those lurid video clips of terrorists gloating over dead corpses in the back of trucks, that level of debauched dehumanization is how they see your fate. Today should be a day of celebration for supporters of democracy and human rights worldwide. As Gazans break out of their open-air prison and Hamas fighters cross into their colonizers' territory. The struggle for freedom is rarely bloodless, and we shouldn't apologise for it. The struggle for freedom, democracy and human rights, machine gunning a music festival, ISIS Bataclan style, raping young women and piling up their dismembered remains. In the name of democracy, what did you think decolonisation meant? Vibes, papers, essays, losers. Left-wing student groups at British universities up and down the country, praising the killing of at least 600 innocents as a heroic fight by the martyrs against fascist and criminal settlers. Fascist and criminal settlers like Yoni Asher's 3 and 5-year-old girls, like this kidnapped young boy. So I guess we've learned that everyone who uses the term decolonize is just advocating for mass murder and war crimes. And to be clear, none of this is a defense of the state of Israel, or a naive suggestion that any of the people running that country give a damn about the interests of anyone in the West, anyone but themselves. Recall that only last month, after migrants staged violent clashes, Israel announced it would deport all African migrants and build another giant border wall to keep millions more out of the country. A policy vehemently supported by Israeli interest groups like the ADL, while those same groups constantly lobby for white Western countries to be subsumed by migrants, demonising anyone who speaks out against it. But then on the flip side, Gaza must turn into a parking lot by tomorrow and all Arabs deported to Europe. Gee, thanks for that. They're indiscriminately levelling Gaza as we speak. Over 1,000 tons of bombs dropped on the area already. Every unspeakable horror that happened to innocent Israeli civilians is now happening to innocent Palestinian civilians. Reports of schools and mosques being targeted. Over 2 million Palestinians live in Gaza, already under the rule of a demented Hamas government. And the Israeli defense minister said today that as a form of collective punishment, they're all going to be treated like animals.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
The exact same way that Hamas terrorists who ambushed that music festival treated those innocent young people like hogs. Meanwhile, a whole host of conservative commentators who railed against America's involvement in funding the war in Ukraine are now suddenly all pro-war, with some openly demanding that the US support the genocide of Palestinians. Breitbart editor-at-large Joel Pollack demanding Gaza be wiped out. Dave Rubin demanding Gaza be bombed the fuck out of for however long it takes. The US deep state has also seized upon the slaughter to grease the skids once again for more entrenched American involvement in the Middle East. Because it's worked out great so far, hasn't it? Dubious claims that Iran funded the Hamas attack, goading Hezbollah into entering the conflict as a justification to launch an attack on Iran. They're all carnal killers who won't stop at the spilling of any amount of blood to plunge the globe into another world war. There are no good actors on any side of this conflict. They're all malevolent bastards. And humanity really has hit rock bottom, hasn't it? When saying brutally slaughtering innocent civilians is evil, whoever does it becomes the rarest take in response to all this. Get early access to videos, exclusive live streams, and personally DM me. You've seen how much I get demonetized all the time. Well, this is how you support me. By subscribing at pauljosephwatson.locals.com. Please click the link in the description.